The FBI has investigated more than 40 cases of rail sabotage in Washington state alone, in one state. Now, a lot of those attacks involve so-called shunt devices. Those are wires stretched between tracks that interfere with the train's electrical signals and cause derailments. In one incident, just before Christmas in 2020, a shunt caused a train to derail in Custer, Washington. That train spilled 30,000 gallons of crude oil and forced locals to evacuate their homes. Well, that's not the environmental disaster that Joe Biden talks about, because, of course, he can't buy solar panels from the Chinese to fix it. But it was, objectively speaking, an act of terrorism. The interesting thing is, very often, in fact, in the majority of cases, people who commit acts of terrorism against infrastructure, whoever they are never punished. And the ones who are caught aren't really punished. One woman who tried to destroy trains using a shunt got out of jail after only a year. Oh. So no one's paying any attention, and no one really seems to care, because what does that have to do with environmental racism and climate?
But they're not.
And possibly as a result of that attitude, there are an awful lot of train derailments in this country, many more than you may realize. In the last calendar year, more than 1,000 trains went off the tracks in the United States. Well, how's that for a metaphor? Just today, 2 more trains derailed. One of them was in South Carolina, and one was in Texas near Houston. The train near Houston was also carrying hazardous materials, as so many trains are. What's going on here exactly? We're not even going to guess. But we can tell you the chaos is not limited to our rail system. There have also been many recent attacks on our power grid. Very few of those attacks have been widely reported. Last year, there were more than 100 attacks in the United States, attacks on our power grid. In North Carolina this winter, for example, nearly 50,000 people lost their power in freezing temperatures when somebody shot up 2 energy substations. And so
it sounds good.
Why is that not a big story? Oh, it's not a story at all. And then, of course, at the same time, we've also seen a series of bizarre accidents befalling the food industry, threatening our food supply. That would include unexplained fires and plane crashes in processing plants, to chicken feed that seems to stop egg production. Boy, next they'll be coming for the water. Oh, wait, they are. Less than a month into the Biden administration was also a highly sophisticated attack on the water supply outside Tampa.
This is Tucker Carlson.
Pinellas County Sheriff Bob Galtieri says a water treatment plant operator first noticed the remote access hack. The bad actor increased the amount of sodium hydroxide, or lye, in the water supply from 100 parts per million to more than 11,000. For the 15,000 residents of Oldsmar, Florida, the increase of sodium hydroxide in the water supply could have caused vomiting, chest, and abdominal pain.
This type of activity and this type of hacking of critical infrastructure is not necessarily limited to just water supply systems. It can be anything.
Oh, an attack on our water supply. That's weird. I didn't read that in the New York Times. But what's interesting, not to connect the dots or anything, that was not the only attack on our water supply that year. In January 2021, there was a similar effort to poison the water treatment plant that serves the San Francisco Bay Area. An unidentified hacker accessed the facility's computers remotely. According to NBC, quote, after logging in, the hacker deleted programs that the water plant used to treat drinking water. Now, fortunately, in this case, somebody noticed it. The next day, the attack was discovered and those programs were reinstalled, so nobody got poisoned. But they kept trying. There were similar hacks of water treatment facilities in California in August of 2021. There was one in Maine in July of 2021. There was one in Pennsylvania in May of 2021. In Nevada in March, in New Jersey in September of 2020, in Kansas in March of 2019, and so on. So who's looking after our water supply? Water, that's kind of basic. Well, that's the job of the EPA. But what does protecting the water have to do with passing out cash in the name of remediating environmental racism? Oh, nothing!
Oh,
so they're not paying attention.
See where we're at.
In fact, they're not paying attention to such an extent that even the Washington Post, which is a shill for the administration if there ever was one, pointed out that, quote, for more than 2 decades, the EPA has not been resourced or organized to secure the nation's water and wastewater sector against physical and cyber threats. Wait a second. So nobody's paying attention to the most critical infrastructure, not the racist roads, but food, water, energy, transportation infrastructure. Food, water, energy, infrastructure. What does that add up to? Oh, that adds up to a country. You can't have a country without those things. And in every single case, whatever the cause, our food, water, energy, and infrastructure are being degraded. Who knows why?
Frank.
If you didn't know anybody, you think there might be a war
Frank
going
Atlantic
on.
was running.
Why is no one?
He deserves the mayorship. The mayorship. What do you call it? The mayor's office?
Last 2 years, the FBI is
Mayoral office?
For the longest time, there's been some
God.
confusion as to these channels. So I'm going to start by saying this channel will be changing. Many people didn't get the
What do we got,
memo.
sponsored by Pfizer up here,
so I
or
want to
what?
give you this message to let you know what's going on. On this channel, I'd originally started
Pfizer
producing
#1.
years ago one video at 4 p.m. and then eventually created a second channel for kind of nonsense content. I didn't know what I was doing. And then I started making
All
more
these
videos
screens,
on
I'm
my
still
other
on
channel.
My phone. It's ridiculous.
This other channel, as you can see, is youtube.com/TimCastNews.
I'm about to start playing
And it's
chess
where I
on this
post
live
5
stream.
to 6 videos per day. On this channel, I post 1. This channel, I
If
will
would've
no
cropped
longer
one of
be
these
posting
windows
videos
to do
on.
so, I would have.
For a couple reasons. The first is that it has always been very confusing. And as you can see, there's a disparity in the subscriber counts between the channel you're currently
should've
on
did
and
an
the other
intro
channel,
and all of that. I could run a
youtube.com/TimCastNews.
commercial or
There's
something.
1.3 million or so on this channel, but only 1.12 on the other channel. And the other channel
All right,
has
I'm gonna run a
way more
commercial here.
content.
Oh, I better get my
I don't know why
scroll
that might
back
be.
going.
Maybe people like this channel better for whatever reason, or this is the original channel, got most of the subscribers.
Jewish
Maybe
God.
many of those subscribers don't even watch anymore, so it is what it is. So I decided what I'm going to do is centralize my Tim Pool Daily Show, which is a podcast on Spotify, Apple, etc., all of those segments combined onto one channel so that it's just easier. Because it is confusing to tell people, like, hey, go to youtube.com/TimCast, but it's called Tim Pool, and it's very strange and confusing. So, if you're seeing this video, you will probably not see videos from me posted to this channel, and instead of just ending this channel outright, we're probably going to alter it and use it for timcast.com, meaning you'll see on-the-ground reporting, you'll see documentaries. We got a documentary from Lauren Southern called Infringed
Sorry, I
coming
had
out
to check
soon,
the audio.
plus a documentary on the Federal
Sounds good, if I might
Reserve
say
from
so
Ben Stewart
myself.
and Harrison Schultz coming out soon as well. And we needed a place to put them. So there's no easy solution, right? It's not a good idea to change a YouTube channel. You guys subscribed for a specific kind of content, me talking.
What is Tim even
and
talking
now you'll
about?
end up seeing videos you might not want.
How much Adderall and bees?
I know. I always say
you
that's a
need?
really bad idea. But the alternative is what? Just delete the channel? I mean, look, if 1.3 million people subscribed because they like the content that I and we produce, but
That's
only
all right.
800,000 actually want to watch the new content, maybe it does make sense to use this channel. The reality is it may end up bleeding subscribers, and that's fine if you don't want to be here, but I don't want to just delete it. Keep it around for a long time. Some of the videos will still get views, but we do need to centralize the content that comes from me in one place, and I should have done it a long time ago. And then we do need a new channel
Better get
for
some
the
commercials
documentaries we're
queued
putting
up.
out, for other shows, other content, man on the street interviews and things like that, which will end up right here. So maybe it's not what you
Going back
want,
to
but
Oklahoma City here.
and you know, maybe you're not happy about it, but I will tell you this. Head over to youtube.com/TimCastNews and subscribe, where I will post videos at 10 a.m., 1 p.m., 4 p.m., and then 3 at 6, 6:15, and 6:30. On this channel, I don't really know what we're going to do. I just know that it's time to centralize it, change things up, trying to clean things up and form everything into a proper functioning company. So I am excited for the
Where's
potentials that
the
we're going to see here.
marijuana bill? That's what I.
We've got man on the street interviews,
Also
field
wanna
reporting,
see.
and documentaries coming out soon. And I think you're going to get a kick out of them,
For sure.
especially the man on the street stuff.
Down here a little
Those are
bit.
always really funny. See, I want to do men on the street stuff where we don't just insult stupid people. We genuinely ask them questions.
Here, let me
so
refresh your page
imagine
anyway.
the mocking stupid people combined with change my mind, where we're not trying to argue with you, but we actually want to hear what you have to say and have real conversations, and maybe it might actually end up being funny.
Get me Oklahoma.
So this is a short
City.
video today, because some people requested that I make a video explaining what's going on with the channel, because some are saying, hey, where are the videos? What's going on? Go to youtube.com/TimCastNews. Subscribe, because I'm going to be posting all of my videos there from now on. And go to youtube.com/TimCastIRL
that?
for our live show, Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. And then eventually you may see some cool and interesting stuff on this channel. So
There
I'll leave
he
it there.
is.
Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you all over at youtube.com/TimCastNews. And also, don't forget, go to timcast.com, click the Join Us button, and become a member if you want to support our
Look at
work
a map.
directly. This is
Oh,
what it's all about. Creating an uncancelable hub at
Jesus.
timcast.com, centralizing the content in specific
Nice.
places to better control for what we produce. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see y'all then.
Okay. Okay. What else we got? Based Asian.
Vice recently hosted a minorities discussion panel.
Asians, right, on average, make more money, better test scores, get into better colleges, all that stuff. I think the question is, why is that?
That's actually a myth because we cannot be...
That's actually a myth because... No, it's not. Shut up.
We need to observe what makes people successful and unsuccessful. And I think when you look at trends that are generally true in the Asian community, usually you have families that are sticking together, people are taught to work hard in school, not get into trouble, not have kids out of wedlock, not, you know, it's just a matter of like, well, common sense, that's what makes people successful.
Based. Strange, isn't it, how Asians living in non-white countries, generally speaking, are hardworking, law-abiding, have strong family units and are successful in business, until they enter America and catch the woke mind virus. Then suddenly all those traits become problematic. Wokeism really is a race to the bottom, isn't it? The equal sharing of misery.
See what else we got. Mark Dice, he's pretty reliable.
So the massive
I don't know
trade
why you wear a
derailments
black
and
shirt, though.
chemical
Explain to me, Mark Dice, why you wear a black shirt if you're gonna green screen. It looks like
spill in Ohio that's being covered up is finally starting to get some national
every
coverage.
video.
And what a surprise, there were more toxic chemicals on the train that derailed in Ohio.
But first, more after this commercial.
Running out of money, running into debt. Running from bill collectors, I ain't paid them yet. Shit you deal with, no matter how rich you get. And even more, depending on the gas you get. Word for my niggas getting married. Seriously, can you be? Can you be? Can you be? Will you be? Can you be? Can you be? You be? Can you be? Can you be? Can you be? Can you be? Will you be? Can you be? Can you be?
Okay, you guys enjoy the commercial? Hope
Well,
you
then
didn't see the date.
originally
Don't look at the
reported.
date.
But Pete Buttigieg, the transportation secretary, whose job it is to
Sunday.
make sure that interstate commerce,
One of these
transportation
Sundays.
systems like railroads are functioning and safe, doesn't care. Instead, he is concerned that there are too many white people who work construction jobs.
To work with your contractors, to work with your community colleges on building a workforce that reflects the community. We have heard way too many stories from generations past of infrastructure where you got a neighborhood, often a neighborhood of color, that finally sees the project come to them, but everyone in the hard hats on that project looking like, doing the good paying jobs, don't look like they came from anywhere near the neighborhood.
Right.
Instead of leading an investigation into what happened or even acknowledging it, Pete's just having a gay old time as usual.
It's had its challenges.
Right.
I mean, if you look at what the American transportation systems have faced in the last 2 or 3 years, partly because of the pandemic, we've faced issues from container shipping to airline cancellations. Now we got balloons.
That's right.
We have an incompetent transportation secretary who was appointed to that position specifically as a diversity hire because she likes to stick things where they weren't designed to go. MSNBC's Joy Reid, the angry black woman, did a surprisingly in-depth report about what happened and what the concerns are. And then she, like the train, went off the rails.
The NTSB is still investigating the exact reason for the derailment, but they say it was likely caused by mechanical issues on one of the rail car axles. And while that investigation is taking place, there is renewed scrutiny on some of the deregulation that has left the industry vulnerable to these kinds of disasters, including the Trump administration's reversal of an Obama-era rule that required braking system upgrades for high-hazard trains hauling flammable liquids.
It was Donald Trump's fault The train didn't need extra strong brakes. It just needed the wheels not to fall off. Remember when they blamed Donald Trump for hurricanes, too?
As Florence bears down on the Carolinas, a damning Washington Post editorial is calling President Trump, quote, complicit in this storm, not for failing to prepare, but for failing to address climate change. So senior political analyst John Avlon has more for us. What do you see, John?
That's right, Allie. It's so bad that according to 2 Harvard scientists, Trump's environmental policies could lead to an additional 80,000 unnecessary deaths every decade.
This is the network, by the way, that calls themselves the most trusted name in news. But for some actual accurate news, we're going to have to turn to a local Ohio affiliate to try to figure out what the heck is going on with this cover-up about the chemical spill.
Tonight, we know more about the chemicals that were on the train.
First News digital reporter Jen Rodriguez has been in the Village today taking a closer look at what else was on that train. She has those details and much more in our top story tonight at 6.
We now know 3 more chemicals that were on board the Norfolk Southern train that derailed here in East Palestine just over a week ago. And we're being told that some of those chemicals are dangerous.
We basically nuked a town with chemicals so we could get a railroad open.
Caggiano says it's possible some of these chemicals could still be present in homes and on objects until you clean them thoroughly.
So there's a lot of what ifs, and we're going to be looking at this thing 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the line and wondering, gee, cancer clusters could pop up, well water could go bad.
But the EPA would never lie about hazardous chemicals being in the air, right? Wait, what's this?
Been called a toxic soup of some of the most dangerous things you can inhale. Yet at the same time, the head of the EPA said the air at Ground Zero was safe in the days after 9/11. Today, that same person, former New Jersey Governor Christine Todd Whitman, testified at a congressional hearing into the matter. But her claims were met with some serious opposition.
Her lies were exposed, I think is what you meant to say, because yes, the EPA lied about the air quality at Ground Zero after 9/11. And here, over 20 years later, it takes a former comedian, Jon Stewart, to try to do something to get these people the medical treatment that they needed. Maybe the reason that train derailed is because it wasn't properly maintained, because they didn't get any money from the Department of Transportation, because there were too many white people working on the railroad.
Where do you see these dollars for construction going, and what do you think it's going to do to Black and brown communities?
This is really important. We're going to create billions and billions of dollars in economic opportunity, and we have to make sure that happens equitably.
Equitably, that's a code word, meaning they don't want to help white people to the back of the bus.
So let me talk about 2 parts of that. The first is where the investments happen. Where are we going to fix the bridge? Where are we going to improve the road? Where are we going to lay the pipe?
And not in white communities, obviously.
We got to make sure we're doing that equitably, especially knowing that it was often in Black and brown communities that there was either a failure to invest and we didn't have a good road or transit system in a certain neighborhood, or the investment came through in the wrong way, like a highway dividing a Black neighborhood in 2. There's been a lot of that in the American
And the interstate system was built to keep certain groups in and certain groups out. So it was built on a racist system, correct?
Yeah, often this wasn't just an act of neglect. Often this was a conscious choice. There is racism physically built into some of our highways. And that
Actually, I think the interstate highway system was developed for military reasons, in case equipment needed to be moved quickly to other parts of the state or the country in case there was another war. Pete Buttplug got a lot of ridicule for those idiotic comments, and he did what all liberals do when faced with their absurdity. He doubled down.
as to where we target those dollars, I'm still surprised that some people were surprised when I pointed to the fact that if a highway was built for the purpose of dividing a white and a black neighborhood, or if an underpass was constructed such that a bus carrying mostly black and Puerto Rican kids to a beach, or it would have been, in New York was designed too low for it to pass by, that obviously reflects racism and design choices.
Yes, I'm sure it was a big conspiracy. In other news, this is how CNN lied by omission about the shooting at Michigan State University last night.
The campus police tweeted that the suspected gunman is, quote, a short male with a mask. That's basically all we know, but they do believe he has...
No, that's not all that we know. You're leaving out one of the key details that could potentially help identify this person at large, this dangerous psycho. The police also included in their description of the suspect that he's black. So that's not basically all that you know. So this story, of course, will disappear from the networks. This is going down the memory hole immediately. Subscribe to my channel if you're new here, because you won't find analysis like this anywhere else, where we mock liberal lunatics, debunk fake news, confirm conspiracy facts, and expose celebrity scum. So stay tuned, and I will see you soon.
What do we got here? What do we got? You guys ready for some audio that isn't me? Chelsea. Oh my god, I think Moto's driven all the way back to shut me down. I love this body language person. I hope you guys have watched this
so
before.
here is
If
some
not,
news
it's really
that
good. She's
no
cool.
one
She's
is
good.
talking about. Israel seems to be imploding. There's a video to this, so calm down. But I figured some context to this man's words, which is the president of Israel, would give some understanding of what we're looking for and to why you're seeing it. So this is via VOA. It's Middle East News, VOA. This is from the Associated Press. Tel Aviv, Israel. Thousands, tens of thousands of Israelis took to the street in several cities across the country Saturday, protesting judicial overhaul plans by Benjamin Netanyahu's government. Now, just an FYI, their elections don't go like any of ours. Oh no. If the person running the show don't like the results, he just asks for another election until you, the people, get it right. Which is why Netanyahu is always in there. Critics say measures introduced by the new hardline government would weaken the Supreme Court, limit judicial oversight, and grant more power to politicians. Protesters say that would undermine democracy. The rift over the power of courts is deepening as the government is set to introduce some of the legislation in Parliament Monday amid calls for partial strikes by businesses and professional groups. For the 6th week, protesters pressed on with large rallies, with main one in the central city of Tel Aviv and several smaller gatherings in other cities. Now, this is a very tame news story about what's going on over there, because you're about to hear this guy talk about some things that should scare people, especially those in office, because apparently it's not just tens of thousands, and they're not just protesting, they're attacking politicians. So what we're really looking for, is he scared? Are there flexion points of even more terror? Or are they just hyping something in order to justify locking down the citizenry? Shall we begin?
We're not in a political division. We are in the midst of a crisis. And therefore, as Israeli presidents have done before in such...
So you're hearing the translation. I don't speak Hebrew, so it might be a lag. More than likely, it is a lag between the translator who processes what he hears and then puts it out of his mouth. But as you can see, he's reading a prepared speech. He's got the paper right there in front of him. He is giving good eye contact. Now, I've never seen this man before. I do see some stress lines in between the eyes and in the forehead, but they're not, shall I say, very prominent. It's more like, it would be the equivalent of a stern talking to, as far as the kind of stress that's there.
Extreme cases, I refuse to stand aside. I hear and see the protests all over the country. Wide audience of patriots who are fulfilling their rights of protest and are committed to the destiny of the people. We all feel that we are a moment.
Okay, so those lines between his eyes are becoming more and more prominent. So it would tell me that the stress is building up. It's not a lot, because it's just that one little spot, but they're there and they've stayed there through a few sentences.
Before a collision, and even a violent collision, that we're on the verge of an explosion. I wish, I beg of each and every one of you, my brothers and sisters, the threats from outside are great enough. Any sort of violence.
So I'm going to assume on the Believe Me Look, he's speaking on the outside threats, which is obviously different from everything else that we've seen. So it's kind of like, not so bad. maybe a little bit of emphasis. We don't really know, but it seems like it's out of place considering what we have seen.
And violence against those who are elected is a red.
And there we see the eyes. You saw that eyebrow movement come in, and even more stress, the violence against politicians. So that is a real stressor. It's a really big one because he had to give so much to it in his face subconsciously. It's like, oh, okay. Oh, wow, this is getting pretty hairy for him. Now, the context being he's probably living in his bubble, and the politicians that are out there getting attacked probably didn't have security around them, or the security was overwhelmed considering the numbers that are out there. So him in his position, he has more security and more ways to travel that are more secure.
Line that we must not cross in the choice between breaking apart and joining together. We choose joining together.
I don't think that word matches quite that. We choose joining together, but he points towards them. So to me, it's kind of like, you. I say he's getting pretty nervous. The little tells that we saw, he's getting pretty nervous over these protests. These are protests unlike anywhere else in the world. These people are armed. All of them join the military after school. I believe they have it's either 2 years or 4 years that they, by law, have to do. So they all have experience with weapons. They all have experience in combat. And most likely, considering all the fighting that Israel has done for the many decades, all of them have experience in combat. Like actual combat, not pretend.
If you like it, please share and subscribe. Thanks for watching.
Can't afford to lose another night. Here, let's watch some more body language, lady.
Now, I know many of your favorite members gave great speeches, and that's great. We're not really going to be covering that. What we are going to be covering is, do these people actually think there's consequences to their action? Because this is all, well and good. But if they're not afraid of any consequences, then it's just business as usual. So I'm sure you can understand why I would be very curious to see if these people are scared pooless. So this is a really nice view. We can see prior to the hearing how things are going. Okay, we are seeing some nervousness. And forgive me, at this point, I don't know their names or their relationship to anything, except for the Indian lady in the middle with the blue suit jacket. So the gentleman with the glasses on her side, I believe he's a lawyer. And the gentleman on the other side, I think that's Yoel Roth. And until I find out otherwise, that's who they'll be. I have no idea who this lady is with the funky hair. But at this point, the Indian is looking nervous. She's not relaxed. She's not trying to support herself in anything. She's trying not to touch or invade any space. The gentleman with the glasses, he's guarded, hands on the table. I would say he is less nervous of consequences. He's also giving the lawyer a tight smile. So he is nervous. Don't get me wrong. They're all nervous, except the lady with the green and the funky hair. And you've got, I believe, is Yoel Roth on the other side of the Indian lady, in the same position that she is in, pretty much mimicking each other, which then goes to their relationship. They would be allies, and allies who feel cornered or are stressed from their surroundings will start to mimic what the other one is doing. If one is relaxed, then the other one will be relaxed as well. So they have more of a personal relationship and will feed off of each other. And you see in this situation, they are mimicking each other with the tightness and not trying to invade any space. And the look on the Indian lady's face, I swear, could kill.
Today's hearing is the House Oversight and Accountability Committee's first step in examining the coordination between the federal government and big tech to restrict protected speech and interfere in the democratic process. Social media platforms are increasingly the place Americans go to express their views, debate issues, and gather news and information. These platforms are the virtual town square. However, many social media platforms are under the control of people who are hostile to the fundamental American principles of free speech and expression protected in the U.S. Constitution. We've witnessed big tech autocrats wield their unchecked power to suppress the speech of Americans to promote their preferred political opinions. Twitter was once one of these platforms until Elon Musk purchased the company a few months ago. Mr. Musk has pledged to end censorship that goes beyond the law. He has pledged to allow Americans' voices be heard, not quashed. In this hearing, we will examine the actions taken by Twitter prior to Mr. Musk's ownership. Many of these actions were carried out by the witnesses before us today. Prior to Mr. Musk's takeover of the company, Twitter aggressively suppressed conservative
The gentleman, he's swaying, does a hard swallow. The Indian lady is not really wanting to move.
Officials, journalists, and activists. This includes shadow banning, locking accounts, and banning accounts altogether. In fact, Twitter's previous management team deplatformed and suppressed not just conservative voices, but anyone whose opinion strayed from what they deemed acceptable. Opinions such as that students could and should attend school in person to curb learning loss. In the past, Twitter's leadership included previous CEO Jack Dorsey, claimed the company did not limit the visibility of certain accounts and tweets known as shadow padding. He said this in front of Congress in 2018. But we now know they did, even placing such accounts on search and trend backlists. Twitter's employees made censorship decisions on the fly, often not following the company's own policies. It worked hand in hand with the FBI to monitor the protected speech of Americans, receiving millions of tax dollars to do so. Twitter, under the leadership of our witnesses today, was a private company the federal government used to accomplish what it constitutionally cannot: limit the free exercise of speech. We now know all this thanks to Elon Musk and the independent journalists who have contributed to what are known as...
All right, we're going to keep this picture because this would be prior to the questioning. And as you have watched many of these committee meetings prior to this one, it's 4 hours. These people get tired. The less stress driven at them, the more energy they have at the end. The more stress given to them, the less energy they'll have at the end. So we'll be able to compare.
Ms. Gaddy.
Chairman Comer, Ranking Member Raskin, and members of the committee, thank you for this opportunity to provide this opening statement. After a decade as a corporate lawyer, I joined Twitter in 2011 as the first member of the corporate legal team. In 2013, I was promoted to general counsel. In 2018, I became the chief legal officer.
She's fidgeting as she's reading. She's extremely nervous. I have no idea what all is in those Twitter emails that she wrote. I don't think we'll ever completely know. But I watched her doing a interview with Jack on Joe Rogan. And we did that interview, by the way, if you want to go look it up. Very confident woman, very aggressive, claimed her space, spoke forcefully, did not hesitate to cut people off if she disagreed. So to now see her in this arena where she doesn't want to claim any space, she puts just her fingertips to play with the paper as she reads it. You can hear the nervousness in her voice, and her eye contact for someone who is so well read isn't very good, because she'd rather read verbatim what she wrote than to have any eye contact with the people in front of her. She's terrified, which kind of makes me wonder why she volunteered to come here in the first place. Because as we have seen, people who ignore subpoenas, generally nothing happens in government.
Mr. Roth.
Thank you, Chairman Comer, Ranking Member Raskin, and members of the committee for the opportunity to speak with you here today. In nearly 8 years at Twitter, I worked in and led a division called Trust and Safety. Trust and Safety's core duty is content moderation, removing tweets that violate Twitter's terms of service and suspending users who repeatedly break the rules. This work is sometimes dismissed merely as censorship, but it represents a key way that Twitter and other companies live up to their responsibility to keep the users of their products safe. Much of this work is uncontroversial. For example, taking down accounts that engage in child sexual exploitation or promote terrorism.
Now, as he speaks, he's not even coming up to play with his paper. And didn't he get in trouble for... No, he was advocating for child sexualization. Good.
Thank you, Ms. Navaroli.
Good morning, Chairman Comer, Ranking Member Raskin, and members of the committee. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak with you all today. I'm here because there is an urgent need for us to understand the impact that social media companies are having on our democracy. I will be very clear. I was not involved in the decision around Hunter Biden's laptop, but I was involved in decisions that were made leading up to, during, and after the January 6th attack on the Capitol. If we are going to talk about social media in the government, we need to talk about Twitter's failure to act before January 6th. I am here to tell you that doing nothing is not an option. If we continue to do nothing, violence is going to happen again. My background is as a trained lawyer and journalist, and my expertise over the past decade has been in the areas of media, technology, law, and policy, with a particular focus on social media and free expression. I joined Twitter in 2019, and by 2020, I was the most senior expert on Twitter's U.S. safety policy team. My team's mission was to protect free speech and public safety by writing and enforcing content moderation policies around the world. These policies included things like abuse, harassment, hate speech, violence, and privacy. So if no other algorithm or no other human could decide if a tweet violated my team's policies, the safety team policy acted as the final moderators. If a high-profile individual like any member of this committee or President Trump tweeted something controversial, it was sent to my team's desk. Every day, we had to decide whether a particular piece of content equated to yelling fire in a crowded theater. My work at Twitter and subsequently at Twitch put me in the middle of key events in history. What I've learned from them is that social media played and continues to play a role in these events. And 2 years after January 6th, we still need to better understand the role that Twitter played in order to prevent it from happening again. So what do we need to understand?
You're going to
First,
prison.
Twitter's leadership bent and broke their own rules in order to protect some of the most dangerous speech on the platform. I'm going to talk a little bit about what happened in the months leading up to January 6th. During this time, my team worked to try to minimize the threat of violence that we saw coming. After President Trump instructed the Proud Boys to stand back and stand by in a debate, we considered the danger that that statement would have if it was tweeted. So we crafted what we called a coded incitement to violence policy to address dog whistles like this. Instead of approving it, management bent over backwards to find ways to not approve it. On January 5th, when the policy was still not approved, I led a meeting where one of my colleagues asked management whether someone was going to have to get shot before we were allowed to take down tweets. Another colleague looked up live tweets and read them to management to try to convince them of the seriousness of the issue. Still, no action was taken. On the morning of January 6th, I sent Twitter lawyers a message warning them that our team was hamstrung by leadership. 2 days later, when it looked like it was going to happen all over again, I asked management whether they wanted more blood on their hands. Only then did they act. The second problem is that there is way too much power concentrated in the hands of too few. With January 6th and many other decisions, content moderators like me did the very best that we could.
100%
But far too often, there are far too few of us, and we are being asked to do.
I was sitting there watching that. I think I played it too long. She getting on my nerves because I ain't never seen her before. And I was very curious what her story would be. You see her hand shaking as she turns the page. She's giving really good eye contact and forceful with her words and her body as she just hammers it up and down. She truly believes this. So she literally believes that Trump, with millions of followers, has done more damage with his millions than the Antifa groups, who have a maximum of around 100 each, who've been burning cities down.
Chair recognizes Ms. Mace for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Twitter files were not just about Hunter Biden's laptop. Twitter files make it apparent Twitter worked overtime to suppress accurate COVID information. Dr. Jay Bhattacharya is a professor of medicine at Stanford who once tweeted an article he wrote about natural immunity. Thanks to Elon Musk's release of the Twitter files, we learned some of his tweets were tagged with the label of Trends Blacklist. Apparently, the views of a Stanford doctor are disinformation to you people. I, along with many Americans, have long-term effects from COVID. Not only was I a long hauler, but I have effects from the vaccine. It wasn't the first shot, but it was the second shot that I now developed asthma that has never gone away since I had the second shot. I have tremors in my left hand, and I have the occasional heart pain that no doctor can explain, and I've had a battery of tests. I find it extremely alarming Twitter's unfettered censorship spread into medical fields and affected millions of Americans by suppressing expert opinions from doctors and censoring those who disagree with the CDC. I have great regrets about getting the shot because of the health issues that I now have that I don't think are ever going to go away. And I know that I'm not the only American who has those kinds of concerns. Another example of what Twitter has done to censor folks is from Dr. Martin Kulldorff, a Harvard-educated epidemiologist, who once tweeted, "COVID vaccines are important for high-risk people and their caretakers. Those with prior natural infection do not need it, nor children." The Twitter files reveal this tweet was deemed false information because it ran contrary to the CDC. So my first question this morning of Ms. Gaddy, may I ask of you, where did you go to medical school?
I did not go to medical school.
I'm sorry?
I did not go to medical school.
That's what I thought. Why do you think you or anyone else at Twitter had the medical expertise to censor a doctor's expert opinion?
Our policies regarding COVID were designed to protect individuals. We were seeing...
You guys censored Harvard-educated doctors, Stanford-educated doctors, doctors that are educated in the best places in the world, and you silenced those voices. My next question is, did the U.S. government, I have another chart I want to show you, Ms. Gaddy. I have another tweet by someone with a following of a full 18,000 followers. This person put a chart from the CDC on Twitter. It's the CDC's own data, so it's accurate by your standards, and you all labeled this as misleading. You're not a doctor, right, Ms. Gaddy?
No, I'm not.
Okay, what makes you think you or anyone else at Twitter have the medical expertise to censor actual, accurate CDC data?
I'm not familiar with these particular situations.
Yeah, I'm sure you're not. But this is what Twitter did. They labeled this as inaccurate. It is the government's own data. It's ridiculous that we're even having to have this conversation today. It's not just about the laptop. This is about medical advice that expert doctors were trying to give Americans because social media companies like Twitter were silencing their voices. I have another question, my last one for you, Ms. Gaddy. Did the U.S. government ever contact you or anyone at Twitter to pressure Twitter to moderate or censor certain tweets? Yes or no?
We have a program.
Okay, so you can honestly see it right then and there as she begins this. Her eyeballs are really in the filter mode. And she's going really slow as she tries to answer this because her brain is trying to engage, how do I say this, in a filtered way so I don't get in trouble for lying, I don't get any backlash.
Mr. Roth, did the government tell you that the Biden laptop story was fake?
No, sir, they did not.
Did they tell you it was hacked?
No, sir, they did not.
On October 14, 2020, Twitter blocks the New York Post story on the Hunter Biden, the New York Post story on Hunter Biden, and suspends their account. The night before, FBI Special Agent Elvis Chan sends you an email. The email says this: heads up, I will be sending a teleporter link for you to download 10 documents. It's not spam. Please confirm receipt when you get it. 2 minutes later, 6:24 p.m., you respond back, received and downloaded, thanks. What were those 10 documents?
Twitter didn't give me access to my laptop, but Special Agent Chan has said publicly, and the FBI has confirmed, that those documents did not relate to Hunter Biden, and that's my recollection of them.
What did they relate to?
My interactions with Agent Chan and with the FBI almost entirely focused on what the FBI called malign foreign interference, things like Russian troll farms and Iranian involvement in the elections, not...
Be right back after a message from our sponsors.
Running out of money, running into debt. Running from bill collectors, I ain't paid them yet. Shit you deal with, no matter how rich you get. And even more, depending on the bitch you get. Word for my niggas getting married. Seriously, can you be? Can you be? Can you be? Will you be? Can you beat? Can you beat? You beat? Can you beat? Can you beat? Can you beat? Can you beat? Will you beat? Can you beat? Can you beat?
And we're back.
Not on any type of domestic
Any of the
activity.
information on there classified?
No, sir, I do not hold a security clearance, and so I would not have received any classified information.
Who does hold a security clearance? I'll just go to the second email here. I'm just curious about this. What I propose is that 30 days out from the election, this is another email to you from Mr. Chan. 30 days, we get temporary clearances. You pick who they are. Who were the people at Twitter who had a security clearance?
To be honest, sir, I'm not sure, and we never ultimately followed through on this plan to get temporary clearances.
Did anyone at Twitter have a security clearance?
It's my understanding that at least some current or former employees did hold clearances, but I wasn't certain about
Ms.
that.
Gaddy, do you know if anyone took up Mr. Chan's offer to hand out security clearances 30 days before the 2020 election?
Not that I'm aware.
So we don't know how many people had security clearances. Twitter, do we know? Mr. Baker, Mr. Gaddy, Ms. Gaddy, anyone know how many people at Twitter had a security clearance in the 30 days prior to the election?
I don't know the answer to that question,
Ms.
sir.
Gaddy?
I do not know.
Mr. Roth, you don't know?
No, sir.
Well, how about the last one? Ms. Navaroli, do you know?
No.
I mean, it seemed like the offer was to sort of just hand them out like candy. I just wondered who had them. No one knows? Okay. So the FBI didn't tell you that it was fake, didn't tell you that it was hacked. And Mr. Roth, did the story violate your policies?
In my judgment at the time, no, it did not.
Yeah, that's what you said. Said what I would propose, is you said it isn't clearly a violation of our hack materials policy, nor is it clearly a violation of anything else. So I think what a lot of people are wondering is if it didn't violate your policies and they didn't tell you it was fake, didn't tell you it was hacked, why'd you take it down?
The company made a decision that found that it did violate the policy. It wasn't my personal judgment at the time that it did, but the decision was communicated to me by my direct supervisor, and ultimately, I didn't disagree with it enough to object to.
You know what I think happened, Mr. Roth? I think you guys got played. I think you guys wanted to take it deep down. We saw what the chairman put up, where you said, everyone in the White House is a fascist. I think you guys wanted it to be taken down. I think you meet with these guys every week. We know that's been established in the Twitter files. You had weekly meetings with Mr. Chan in the run-up to the election. They send you all kinds of emails. They send you documents on the super secret James Bond teleporter. You get information on that. I think you guys wanted to take it down. I think you guys got played by the FBI. And that's the scary part. Because we had 50, this to me is the real takeaway. 51 former intelligence officials 5 days after you guys take down the Hunter Biden story and block the New York Post account. 5 days later, 51 former intel officials send a letter and they say, the Hunter Biden story has all the classic earmarks of a Russian information operation. The information operation was run on you guys, and then by extension run on the American people. And that's the concern. And to Mr. Raskin's point that you guys aren't bound by the First Amendment because you're a private company, okay, maybe so. But your terms of service don't have to comply with the First Amendment. Would that be right, Mr. Roth? They don't have to. You've said that as much in your testimony.
My understanding of the First Amendment is that it protects people and businesses from government, not informs how the...
In your terms of service. So here's what I want to know. Is this a violation of the First Amendment when the government, Mr. Chan, again, sending you an email saying, we think these accounts need to be looked at because they violate your terms of service? That's a different standard. So you got the government saying your terms of service, which don't have to comply with the First Amendment, but the government saying we don't think these accounts comply with your terms of service, please take them down. You see a problem there, Mr. Roth?
Mr. Chairman, I'm seeing a flashing red light. I'm happy to answer the question.
This little weasel. Oh, this is actually quite sad. Unfortunately, it would be better if we can actually see them as Jim Jordan is biting into their derrieres. But unfortunately, this is why this won't be a very long interview when it comes to this kind of thing. The singers are great, but for body language purposes and what we're actually looking for, not so good. But we can see now, as he tries to answer it, you see him swishing around in his chair. He's got the permanent believe me look on his forehead. I tell you what, between him and the Indian lady, they're going to have massive tension headaches. But he already wanted to get out of it. There's a flashing red light. But I'll answer it. Shut up. Stop talking to me. Oh, it's not over yet, sweetie. You always tell that you're about to hear a moron, because you're talking like this. Like Elmer Fudd. Every one of them, Elmer Fudd.
Mr. Roth, have you communicated with government officials ever on a platform called JIRA? Yes or no? Real quick answer. We're on the clock.
Not
Yes
to
or
the
no?
best of my recollection.
Not to
no.
your recollection? Great. If you did, in the event, communicate, who would have had access to this platform?
That's the nature of my confusion.
Okay.
JIRA is
Did you ever speak to government officials on JIRA regarding taking down social media posts?
again, not to the best of my recollection.
Can you explain to me why the federal government would ever have interest in communicating through JIRA, mind you, a private cloud server, with social media companies without oversight to censor American voices? I want to let you know that this is a violation of the First Amendment, and the federal government is colluding with social media companies to censor Americans. Mr. Chairman, I ask for unanimous consent to submit these graphics into record. And Mr. Roth, I'm going to refresh your memory for you. This flowchart
Without objection, it's ordered.
Thank you, Chair. This flowchart shows the following federal agencies, social media companies, Twitter, leftist nonprofits, and organizations communicating regarding their version of misinformation using JIRA, a private cloud server. On this chart, I want to annotate that the Department of Homeland Security, which has the following branches: Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, also known as CISA, Countering Foreign Intelligence Task Force, now known as the Misinfo, Disinfo, and Malinformation, MDM. This was again used against the American people. The Election Partnership Institute, or Election Integrity Partnership, EIP, which includes the following: Stanford Internet Observatory, University of Washington Center for Informed Public, Graphica, and Atlantic Council's Digital Forensic Research Lab, and potentially, according to what we found on the final report by EIP, the DNC. The Center for Internet Security, CIS, a nonprofit funded by DHS, the National Association of Secretaries of State, also known as NASS, and the National Association of State Election Directors, NASED, and in this case, because there are other social media companies involved, Twitter. What do all of these groups, though, have in common? And I'm going to, again, refresh your memory. They were all communicating on a private cloud server known as JIRA. Now, the screenshot behind me, which is an example of one of thousands, shows on November 3rd, 2020, that you, Mr. Roth, a Twitter employee, were exchanging communications on JIRA, a private cloud server, with CISA, NASS, NASED, and Alex Stamos, who now works at Stanford and is a former security officer at Facebook, to remove a posting. Do you now remember communicating on a private cloud server to remove a posting? Yes or no?
I wouldn't agree with the characterization.
I don't care if you agree. This is your stuff. Yes or no, did you communicate with a private entity, the government agency, on a private cloud server? Yes or no?
The question was if I
Yes or no? Yeah, I'm on time. Yes or no?
Ma'am, I don't believe I can give you a yes or no.
Well, I'm going to tell you right now that you did, and we have proof of it. This, ladies and gentlemen, is joint action between the federal government and a private company to censor and violate the First Amendment. This is also known, and I'm so glad that there's many attorneys on this panel, joint state actors. It's highly illegal. You are all engaged in this action, and I want you to know that you will be all held accountable. Ms. Gaddy, are you still on CISA's Cybersecurity Advisory Council? Yes or no?
Yes, I am.
Okay. For those who have said that this is a pointless hearing.
Like I said, we're looking for, are these people actually getting nervous? We've got Baker, now that we know their names. Baker down there stroking his hand. He's squeezing it, which, for those of you new to the channel, this is a comfort. It's like pressure points. It's relaxing himself because he is that stressed that he's trying to comfort himself. You still got Gotti over here. Does not want to have any space. And remember what we talked about in the beginning. Now this is towards the end of the day. They're almost done. And then the lady who lives in a world that doesn't exist, she has no fear of reprisal. Because as far as she's concerned, she's just a whistleblower.
And I just want to let you guys all know, we found that Twitter was indeed communicating with the federal government to censor Americans. I'd like to remind you that this was all in place before January 6th. So to say that these mechanisms weren't in place and to make it about January 6th, I want to let you know that you guys were actually in control of all of the content, and clearly we have proof of that. Now, if you don't think that this is important to your constituents and the American people from those saying that this was a pointless hearing, I suggest you find other jobs. Chairman, I yield my time.
So it would have been nice if we'd have seen the lady who lives in Fairy Tale Land with her reaction to that. But again, this is why this video isn't that long and we don't get to see all the zingers, because you don't.
Mr. Chairman, point of order.
Chair.
Yeah, I just want to call to the...
Oh, we did get some stress that stayed on her face after that. The woman who lives in La La Land. You see it in her forehead. You see it in the eyes. It's all drawn out. Ooh.
Yeah, I'm chilling.
Obviously, it doesn't stay very long. You see the face start to relax. She's back to her normal fairy tale world.
Attention of the chair and members
yes,
that we're getting awfully close to witness intimidation, and I would ask the chair to intervene.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said, Mr. Mafume.
I said I would caution all members that we were getting very close to witness intimidation, right on the verge of it, and I would ask that the chair and the ranking member agree how we will proceed from this point on. It was the threats that were just made.
Ms. Ocasio-Cortez.
What threats?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And in follow-up to that, I am curious about the committee's rule or the committee's disposition, accusing witnesses of a crime, discussing arrest, discussing, making these allusions and threats. I want to clarify for the record, what is the committee's policy around threatening a witness?
We have the member decorum.
And around the rules of decorum, can we agree that threatening a witness comes close to broaching general decorum? It does broach general decorum of the committee?
With all due respect, Ms. Ocasio-Cortez, we don't agree that there was any witness threatening.
In threatening, when we discuss arrest, when we discuss a potential arrest of a witness and alluding to a witness or suggestion of a witness committing a crime without evidence and without documents being supported to the record.
Can you be more specific?
When we talk about arresting a witness, or when we talk about a witness, insinuating that a witness is lying without documentation, I fear that this constitutes threatening a witness, and that will broach the rules of decorum of this committee.
What's she talking about?
And I'd like to ask that we request witnesses be treated with respect. Thank you.
Appreciate that, and I will remind everyone of the member decorum and witness decorum to treat everyone with respect. I thank you, Ms. Ocasio-Cortez. Do you have anything to add?
No, thank you. I agree with you, Mr. Chairman. I have a separate point of order I just wanted to raise, which is it seems as if several members now seem to have access to some information from Twitter that people on our side don't have, and I would just hope that anybody who's communicated directly with Twitter or received any information relating to the witnesses who has that, who plans to use it, distribute it to the committee in advance. That's okay.
I think that most of the evidence is coming from. I think a lot of the quotes and emails are on the laptop.
Well, I think that at least one member indicated
the Twitter files that Elon Musk has.
Well, one member had indicated that she had received information directly from Twitter.
Okay. Chair recognizes Mr. Edwards.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and to our witnesses, thank you for being with us today. I know it.
So AOC decided to sit there and talk about witness intimidation. I wanted to see if it actually made them relax, like, oh, somebody has stuck up for me. And we still see the same body language. We still see the baker down there massaging his hand. We still see Gotti not wanting to take any space, stressed. Same thing with Yoel Roth. And the only one who has relaxed, you see the shoulders slumped down, is the one who lives in Fairy Tale Land. Everyone else is still.
We're approaching an hour on the dot.
terrified. And we're going to end it there. There's a lot of great reporters out there talking about what came out. All we're looking for is to sit there and see if, oh my gosh, is this actually going to go somewhere? Are these people actually terrified of consequences to their unlawful actions, interfering in all elections, not just presidential?
All right, guys, I appreciate y'all tuning in. If anybody tuned in. Jewish Stream out.